Welcome to the GradeXpert webinar on using student attendance. GradeXpert student attendance module can replace any other system that you're using, including a pen and paper based system, cases, e-cases, pretty much any other attendance system, which means that the attendance data that you use GradeXpert to collect stays in GradeXpert, so that you can use that when you're doing analysis of student achievement and compare that against their attendance rates and so on. In our attendance section of GradeXpert, you need to make sure you firstly set up the attendance parameters correctly, such as the frequency that you want to take attendance, potential reasons for being late or absent, and that's all done in the settings screen. So on the attendance tab in the settings screen, we have a few items that we can adjust. Firstly, we have a list of reasons for students being late or absent. You can add in any reason you like that's not on this list just by clicking the Add button. There's already a 111, let's have a 222, and give it any reason that we want to include in our list of absences. So let's say surgery, for example. And for each absent type, you can choose whether this counts towards your total absences when you're calculating your attendance rates for each student. So for example, a suspension does count to your total absences, but if your students are on camp and not at the school for the day or the week, that doesn't count to the total absences. So you can adjust these one at a time just by ticking or unticking in the counts to total absences column. For each year, you need to make sure that you've set up the term dates for that year before you take attendance. So you just put in the start and end date of term 1, 2, 3, and 4, and that's pretty much all you need to do to get GradeXpert attendance running. We've got some default options here when we take attendance once a day or twice a day. Usually it's morning and afternoon. This is obviously a bit primary school focused, but you can see that we can also show the students photos when we take an attendance and show their attendance history, which means we'll see how many days absent they've been per term while we're taking their attendance, and we'll see that in a moment. We then also have the option to highlight students who have attendance below a specific threshold that we set. So in this case, any students who are absent more than 80% of the time for each term will be shown in the color that we select here, and you can choose any color that you want. And once you're done, you save those settings. And then to actually start the taking attendance, what teachers would do on a daily basis is simply click the attendance button. GradeXpert will read today's date from your computer, and it will also determine if we're taking attendance in the morning or afternoon, also depending on the computer's date. If this isn't your class, you can choose any class to view attendance for from this drop-down list, and the list will be reloaded with the students for that class. The class that you select is also remembered each time, so teachers basically just have to click the attendance button and start marking students present, late, or absent. So you'll see that these students that have come up here have got some information on attendance rates. So in this case, Jeanette in term 1 was absent for 2 days, 1 day in term 2, and 1 day so far in term 3. When we look to Harvey, for example, we can see that his attendance rates in term 3 have fallen below the expected level. And that means that it's an easy way to highlight students where their attendance rate is dropping below the level that we're setting as a threshold. So to begin taking attendance, you simply click present, late, or absent for each student. So let's say Jeanette is present. You can just click present, and you'll see that her afternoon or PM attendance has been set to present. You can also use these keyboard shortcuts, PL or A for present, late, or absent. So if you don't want to use the mouse, you can just press the P key, which I'll press now, and then the next student is automatically selected. And I'll say for Harvey, P for present, and let's say Xavier is absent. So press the A button, and you'll notice now that the list of reasons that have been set up in the settings screen for absences or lateness is then shown. So you can just select the correct item from this list. So, I'm not sure, whatever it is, so let's say he was unwell. You can then also optionally type in a comment over there. So by typing a comment in, that links or adds the comment to the reason for the student's absence. So if they're unwell, let's just say, I don't know, chickenpox. And you'll see now that Xavier's status for being absent in the afternoon is because he's unwell with chickenpox. And then you simply carry on clicking present, late, or absent for each student in the class. Now there are a number of ways to shortcut this. Firstly, if you're looking at your class and you know everyone is here, you don't need to click present for each student. You can just click this button down here that says all present. And what that will do is mark everyone as present without having to select present individually. So if I say yes, you'll see present, present, present. Everyone's marked as present now. And we can then go back to Xavier and mark him as absent for whatever reason. So you don't have to manually click on each student being present. You can go through the all present button and assign everyone that attendance status in one go. The other thing that you can do is you can mark everyone as absent. So let's say you're having an excursion. You click all absent. You'll be prompted to choose the reason. So let's say it's excursion and they went to the zoo. Everyone is then marked as absent as an excursion that have gone to the zoo. Now we've set up excursions as not counting towards the total number of absences, so even though the student is marked as absent from school, on their absent rate, this absent won't be included. And that's pretty much all teachers need to do. There are a few other options. For example, if the teachers don't want to show the student photos, we just untick show student photos. I'm not going to save this data for the moment because I just want to show you how it looks without photos. And then we can also remove the automatic calculation of the student's attendance histories just by unticking show attendance history. We then have a more compact view of the student list, and we can just go present, 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 late, and so on. Now if we wanted to look at the attendance for the morning, so I'm just going to click AM. I'm not going to save the afternoon attendance. Let's say I've taken attendance in the morning and everyone's present except for Catherine and Sonia. I'm going to save this information, and now it's after lunch. Teachers have come back in and now they're going to take attendance for the afternoon session. So they go back into the attendance screen and they know that no one has left or arrived. It's the same attendance status for each student in the morning as it is in the afternoon. So instead of clicking present, late, or absent again for each student, you can just choose this option that says copy from AM. And what GradeXpert has then done is it's taken the AM status for each student and said, well, this is their status for PM as well. But what you could do is you can also then adjust those PM statuses individually as well. So I'm going to click present for Catherine because she's now back at school after her doctor's appointment in the morning. And that's done for every student in the class. And then you can save that information just by clicking save. As you take attendance, you've got some counters up here that show you how many students you've taken attendance for so far for this class. how many present, how many absent, and you also have the ability to look at attendance data for different days. So if I'm looking, for example, instead of today, the 9th of September, let's go to, say, March the 11th. And that's the information that we've got for March the 11th. We can pick a different day here completely. Let's say, I know the 24th. And you can see all the students in this class, save Daryl, were present. Now that's all teachers need to do on a daily basis, because this data is saved in the GradeXpert database as soon as they click the Save button. That means that school leadership can call up the screen to see who's present or absent. This also means that your front office staff can use this to identify students who are absent for the day and contact parents accordingly. Now there are a number of other attendance summary reports that we can use, and we'll show you that in a moment. But before we do, the other option in your attendance module is the ability to set up extended absences. So if you click the Options button at the bottom of the screen and choose Extended Absences, GradeXpert lets you set up a date range for each student who you know in advance will be absent. So if, for example, you know that student Jeanette Adams is going to be away for a week at the start of term 4, you can set that up beforehand so that when the teacher is taking attendance for that week, Jeanette is pre-marked as being away. So let's just call up Jeanette Adams. There she is. So that's the student. And then we say the absent from and to dates. So let's just say she's absent from today. Until 12th of the 9th, for example. And the reason why she's absent for those days are because she is on, say, a family holiday. There we go, extended family holiday. If we then take attendance for today, because that starts today, we've already taken attendance for today, haven't we? Let's go to tomorrow. You can see Jeanette is pre-marked as absent for the reasons that we've specified. So the teacher doesn't necessarily need to remember or know that the student is absent, because GradeXpert will show that they are absent for those days. So that's under the Options button. You click Extended Absences, and you can have a number of students marked for extended absences at any time throughout the year. You could also make these retrospective. So if we say she's absent from the 9th of, or let's say the 9th of the 3rd to the 11th of the 3rd, we then have the option to save these absences to her attendance. That means that if you had a week of a student being away and you didn't know what the absence reason was, you can, after that week, come in here, put in an extended absence for a date range that's already passed, and click Save these past absences to attendance. Now, she may not have been on extended family holiday. Let's say she was quarantined. We just click Saved past absences to attendance. If we now go back to that date, the 9th of the 3rd, and we look at her data from that date, you can see that she's been exempt, or not exempt, but quarantined because of chickenpox or head lice on that date. And you can move to any date you want to be able to see that information for each student. Okay, I'm going to close the attendance screen because I'd like to show you what the attendance summary reports look like. The summary reports are used most often by school leadership and by front office staff because that summarizes all the attendance information that we want to see into a single screen. So here is an example of today's attendance. Now we've only taken attendance for a single class, but as you have more and more classes attendance taken for the day, this list fills out a bit further. So at the moment we can see each student, we can see their reason for being present, or for being absent, or for being late, and there's a number of things that we can do with this summary screen. Firstly, we can change the date range that we're looking at. Let's say I wanted to look at the 9th of the, let's say the 12th of the 3rd, 12th of the 3rd. I'll just click the refresh to bring up that information. So that's again just one day, but you can have this information looking across an entire week or a term or even the whole year if you have information going back that far. So you can see these are preps for that Thursday, and as I scroll down you'll see your year 1s, year 2s, year 3s, and some students are marked as absent, the bulk of students are marked as present, and any student falling below the expected threshold, for example, Gregory Joseph has been absent for 15 days in term 1 and is highlighted here quite easily, and you can see there's 8 days absent there, 8.5 days absent there for different students. Now you may not be interested to see the students who are present, so you can just tick show late and absent only. And now we're just looking at the students that are marked as late or absent for that date range. You can print out your data quite easily. You just click print this list. GradeXpert will then generate a report that you can use as a hard copy printout. Let's just see how that comes up. A pretty straightforward report, and you can see all the same information that you do on the other report. We have our date of attendance, the reason for being absent in the morning and the afternoon if they were absent. So whatever you see on the screen is what's printed on the report. There are a number of other ways that you can view this information. If you wanted to see your attendance summary grouped by class, not by individual students, you can just tick the class option up here. So for this date, the 12th of the 3rd, we want to see by class what our attendance rates are. So we can see for term 1, 2, 3, and 4. In fact, this is the attendance rate for the whole term by class. It's sorted by class. 96, 95, 93. Let's go further down, see if there's anything. No, attendance rate for most classes is above about 90%. You can see here 4J is down to 89%, but it's still above our threshold. And then we can group it by the grade as well as the class. So this is now grouping all classes in a single grade together. And we can see our preps, our year 1s, our year 2s. We can see our year 4s have got the lowest attendance rate, and our best attendance rate is our prep year. Let's also have a look at students by term. I think we've only got one term of data showing here, so this may not give us useful information. Yep, so it's just students by term. All just for term 1, because that date is in term 1. If you put in dates that spanned more than one term, then you'd see term 1, 2, 3, and 4 listed separately here. Let's go back to students by date, because what you can use the summary report for as well is to be able to say, show me teachers that haven't yet taken attendance for today. either morning or afternoon. And that's really handy if you want to keep on top of your attendance data that is put into GradeXpert. So if you tick this box that says missing attendance only, GradeXpert knows who has taken attendance for that day, and we can see that the teacher for class 1N hasn't taken AM or PM attendance. So this missing attendance is a very useful tool to use when you want to be able to let your teachers know that they have missed out taking attendance. You can use GradeXpert to look at attendance data for previous years as well. You just select a different year from this drop-down list. You can also search for any students in this list. So if we want to search for someone called Ivan, I'll just type IV. Well, I just needed to type IV, and there's Ivan's data. And if I had a number of different items here, because I may have been looking, let's look for the 12th to say the 13th. So now we've got 2 days worth of attendance that we're looking at, each individual student. And when that comes up, we'll filter it out just for one student or even just for one class, because that report then can be used as a hard copy record of who was present, late or absent at that day. So you can see each student now has 2 entries for the different days, Thursday and Friday. And if we search just for a single student, let's search for Ivan again, we can see his Thursday and Friday items, and then we can just print the list, which is just his information. So these reports are very useful to be able to show attendance rates by class, by year level, or for an individual student. Now, if you want to use GradeXpert to take attendance in the morning and the afternoon, but you have say a fire drill, there are a couple of options that you have. First one is obviously just take a laptop out with you, because you'll know via the attendance screen who's absent, and you can cross-reference that with the students that you see when you're taking roll in a fire drill. But of course, when a real fire breaks out, the fire department usually just cuts electricity to the school to prevent further fires. So you may not have access to GradeXpert if your electricity is cut, because the database is stored on your school server. So what we generally recommend to schools is just print out, and this is usually just your office staff at the end of the attendance taking period, just print out a report of your absent students for that day. So just tick show late and absent only, and you print that list. And that hard copy can serve as a cross-check when you're taking roll at a fire emergency. Our next version that will be available on a browser interface means that you'll be able to simply take an iPad or a smartphone and take attendance there, but you still will have the issue of your server's power being cut in a real emergency, so it is useful to have a backup of a paper report for that day. Now, the attendance data for each student is saved in their history. So if I go to Students and Results and load up one of the students, their attendance rates are shown in their history. So let's just pick any student, Brooke Anthony. I'll double click to open up their history. And you can see over here we have a summary of all their attendance from 2014, term 2, 3 and 4, and 2015, term 1, 2 and 3, and that's on the attendance tab for each student. So for example, if we can look at 2014 term 3, if I double click on that row, GradeXpert will load up the data for that student, and we can see a very similar report to what we saw previously, which days she was absent in 2014 term 3, and the reason for the absence as well. And again, you can print this list out. Let's say we just want to see the absences only. We tick show latent absent only and print this list. And so that's a summary just of her absences for that year and term. So that's in the attendance tab on that individual student screen. Now the other thing that you can do with your student maps, for example, is you can add in that attendance rate for each student. So this is a reporting template, but what I want to do is I want to add her attendance rate for 2015 semester 1. I'll move that up to the top of the map. And when we look at the information in the map, her attendance rate will automatically be shown in that map because the data is simply pulled in from the GradeXpert database from the attendance data that we've previously entered. So we'll see how that comes up in a moment. So you can see the first column shows us each student's attendance rate for whatever semester we're looking at here. And obviously a semester is 2 terms. So Joanne Armstrong, well, she's a very low attendance rate for 2015 semester 1. That's certainly something to look at. We can actually sort the attendance rate. William Daniels at 36% is very low as well. All the way down to your students who have 100% attendance. So that's how you can include your attendance rates in your student maps when you're using attendance in GradeXpert as well. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's most of the information on student attendance. Does anyone have any other questions that they'd like to ask before we finish up? All right, well, we'll leave it there. As before, we will make this webinar available via recording to all our customers over the next day or two, and you can download and watch it at your convenience. Sorry, there was a question how you can import your data into eCases. The data that is saved in GradeXpert can easily be imported into cases via an export program that is included in your GradeXpert system. And it basically just asks you what is the date range that you want to export attendance for, and then you browse to a file or a folder that the file will be written to. And when you do that, it just creates a text file that can be imported into cases, and we do have instructions for that. Obviously cases is a Victorian system for Victorian state schools. Other schools around the country will use different systems, and this is specifically for importing into cases. So we do have instructions for that, but it's done all through the extract attendance option. Sorry, there was another question. Can you import data from SAMS, which is the attendance system that you use up in Northern Territory? You certainly can import data. So what we would do generally for schools who want to bring in attendance data that is historical, we create a test or an assessment called attendance with the result of number of days absent or attendance rate. And that is what you can use to bring attendance data into GradeXpert. But if you're using GradeXpert for taking attendance, then the two don't really work together, because one is set up just as an assessment, just as a record of a term-long assessment attendance rate, whereas the GradeXpert built-in attendance allows you to go down to each day's attendance status, whether they were present or absent. So we certainly can import attendance data from other systems, prior attendance data, but when you start using GradeXpert for attendance, it works slightly different, in a slightly different way to bringing in data from other systems. Namely, it's a different area of the program that you use to take attendance, and if you've imported attendance data or ongoingly are importing attendance data, that information can't go down to the individual days that a student was present or absent. All right, well, we'll leave it there. Thank you everybody for your time, and we'll see you at the next one. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye.